I'm Jessica Cloud with Real Deal Fundraising. I am a certified fundraising executive and consultant. And every Friday I hop on here at TikTok Live to basically do 30 minutes of free Q&A, consulting, advising, whatever is helpful for the nonprofit community. So let me know if you have any questions about fundraising or nonprofits. Drop them in the chat. I'll be happy to answer them. Today, my theme, and we do not have to solely talk about this, so if you have questions, hop into the chat. But I want to talk about the Giving USA data that recently came out and give you sort of the top line statistics, stories that have come out of the Giving USA data for 2025 and what that means for your nonprofit and your fundraising operation. The Giving USA data just came out a week and a half ago, I think, and the top line headline is really good. We hit $617 billion in philanthropic gifts and revenue in 2025. That's a real number, inflation adjusted. It is 3% increase over 2024. So 3% increase over inflation sounds really good. Lots and lots of money going to support fantastic causes. It is good news. So I do want you to sit with that and celebrate that. Donors really showed up. It's to light a few cautionary statistics, stories that are underneath that headline. The share of giving coming from non-Megadonors, so everyday individual donors, has been shrinking drastically for 40 years. In 1985, individuals, small gift individuals, modest gifts, made up 80% of charitable giving in this country. Today, it is 64. So 80% down to 64. So that is not a blip, right? 40 years showing significant decline in individual donors making gifts. That is a huge structural shift. And since we know that the total dollars have grown year over year, but the number of individual donors has consistently decreased. So this is what we know as the rise of the megadonor. And that means fewer, bigger donors are carrying more of the weight for our organizations. So that is something to really keep in mind, because if you are depending upon 1, 2, 3, or even 5 very large donors to meet your goal, and most nonprofits are, then you are vulnerable because donors pass away, donors' priorities change, donors may not feel that they have as much to give if there are market fluctuations. There's all kinds of things that can happen. So it's the proverbial putting too many of your eggs into one basket, right? So this is something to keep in mind. Beyond that, you are vulnerable to undue influence from those donors. So most donors that make those large gifts are very generous and just want the organization to succeed. But there are many stories that I've heard, and some that I have experienced, of donors who are making those large gifts and see that influence that they have as donors as a way to move the organization in a direction that they want personally, rather than that the board or the mission or the recipients of that nonprofit want to see it go. So we have the influence problem when we have a concentration of our budget given by only a few donors. But we also have the funding diversification problem, where we're more vulnerable and not able to meet our budget if we are dependent upon just a few donors. So those are linked problems, but I think it's distinctive to separate the financial problem of that from the potential ethical and mission issues that it brings up. So let's talk about Megadonors a little bit more, because Mackenzie Scott alone, just Mackenzie Scott, not donors like Mackenzie Scott, not donors of the scale of Mackenzie Scott, but just this one woman accounted for 1/3 of all mega gifts last year. That is wild. And no one can doubt that Mackenzie Scott is doing a lot of good. And I applaud Mackenzie Scott for putting few restrictions on the giving that she is doing. She vets the organizations, or she has people who vet the organizations for her, And she gives to those organizations without a lot of directives. So I like that about Mackenzie Scott's giving, but that is wild that we have 1/3 of those mega transformational gifts coming from just one individual. If you add in Michael Bloomberg, Bill Gates, and the Paul Allen estate, just those 4 names encompass the largest share, like an enormous portion of total philanthropy. So this is absolutely incredible to me. Again, not here to criticize Mackenzie Scott or any of those donors. Please give away more billions, girl. That is absolutely something that we want and need. But this means for your organization, it's a real risk, right? If your fundraising strategy depends on landing 1 or 2 big gifts every single year, you're not really building a fundraising program. You're really building a house of cards that could fall at any moment. Because most of this giving, and this is something that Giving USA noted this year, is tied to the market. If the market dips, your biggest donor has a bad year, your budget's going to go along with that. They cited John Bergdahl at the Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, and he said, quote, "The market has become a larger and larger predictor of giving. That growing reliance means that the unpredictability of the markets is going to start bleeding into an unpredictability in giving." So if the market has a bad year, moving into the second half of 2026, we take a big dip. That means that 2026 may be not as good a year for philanthropy. So we're now much more dependent upon the market because we are dependent upon the kind of donors that hold their wealth heavily in the market versus everyday individual donors that are giving you $10 a month, $100 a year, or something to that effect. I will advocate, as I always do, for a diversified fundraising program. If you are too heavy on just grants, you should build up your individual giving program. If you are too heavy with a few large donors, you should be building a smaller recurring gift program to support your organization at that monthly level, to build that dependable revenue that's not dependent upon one person or 2 or 3 people. So you need to be well spread out with your fundraising strategy. Let's talk about bequests, because bequests are probably the second major headline that came out of Giving USA this year for 2025. This genuinely excites me, but I want it to be a huge takeaway, especially for smaller and mid-sized nonprofits, that you need to get in to planned giving. I know it feels like it's a distraction from meeting your budget for this year, but it's really not. You're really helping meet the budget for the next 3, 5, 10, 15 years when you do planned giving. So bequest jumped nearly 17% in 2025. 17%. So overall giving went up 3%. Bequest share of that went up 17% in 2025. That's a third year out of 4 with double-digit growth in planned gift totals. Researchers aren't ready to call it yet, but the pattern is clear. The great wealth transfer is really starting to move. Now, this is a generational swing, so 3 out of 4 of the last few years is not going to really show a generational shift, but it definitely looks like it's coming. So I want to let you know that it's not your major donors that are necessarily going to make those transformational planned gifts. It's going to be your loyal annual donors that are going to be the people that support you with a planned gift, a bequest, a beneficiary designation. Regular folks can give more in their estate plan because usually annual gifts are made out of income. Major gifts are made out of assets, and usually liquid assets. Planned gifts are made out of non-liquid assets, so that may be their estate beyond death. It may be out of life insurance. It might be part of real estate. There's lots of reasons why regular people can make much larger planned gifts, and they are the ones that are statistically most likely to do that. So when I say the great wealth transfer, we're not talking about major gifts mostly. We're talking about regular everyday people that are already in your database, that are already making you gifts every single year. These are the folks you should be talking to about bequest and beneficiary designations specifically. They are the two easiest ways to get into talking about plan giving. You don't need to necessarily know everything about trust, CRATs, CRUST, real estate, retained life estates, all the annuities. All of that stuff is far too complicated, especially for small shops, to get into plan giving. You just need to know about bequest and beneficiary designations. There's really two ways to do this, and it is essentially promoting and marketing plan gifts on a regular basis. So building that into your marketing plan for your nonprofit, and then knowing what to do when a donor asks you about plan giving and giving them the resources they need to move forward. I know how hard it is to look at your budgetary goal and be like, I don't even know how I'm going to reach this. That's really a tall order, Jessica, to go devote more time over here to plan giving. But I'm telling you, you can pick 2 weeks a year, do a quick little marketing blitz around plan giving. I recommend doing National Estate Planning Awareness Week in October, and then picking another week. It might be a week that's just a random week in March, which is the opposite season. Or it could be you maybe want to build it around Valentine's Day, or you want to build it around a day that's important to your nonprofit, like the week you were founded, and talk about how you can support the organization for the long term. And you just do your marketing there, and then you have things ready. Sample bequest language for your donors. That's an easy way. As long as you have that one document, that template, you can give that to a donor, let them know to go to their attorney with that to customize the language and support your nonprofit. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about estate planning company Free Will. They're a really cool company, and he said there are over 70 members, and you need to be getting on their radar now. It's not optional, it's strategy for the long term. I know I have had those come in. They're not really windfalls out of the sky usually. They are usually a result of some previous development director or executive director talking with donors about plan giving, promoting plan giving and marketing those opportunities to the donor constituency. So you're benefiting from decades maybe of previous plan giving work. And no matter the crisis now, you should be paying it forward by continuing that education in estate giving opportunities for your donors. You need to be paying it forward so that the organization gets those windfalls in 10 years, in 20 years. Her foundation ran a program called Building Bridges Leadership Institute, and they invested $235,000 in mini grants, paid consultants, and staff time across 100 nonprofits in their region. And the goal was capacity building. So helping organizations get stronger from the inside out. Organizations credited consulting support more often than the grant funding as the driver of the real organizational change. The money mattered, absolutely, but what people pointed to when they described what actually changed in their organization was the consultant that knew their name, knew their board, and showed up consistently over time to help them grow and get better, to develop those kinds of strategies that take a look at where you're vulnerable, where your revenue is not diversified, how the board can help in that process, and how you can get in on long-term opportunities like plan giving. So basically, she writes about what made the difference, and it was the consistent relationship with the same consultants across multiple years. So that organization that worked with the same consultant over time came out of the program with stronger strategic plans, more complete governance, and more durable practices. So not because consultants are magic, right? Like we're not absolutely magic, but because the real organizational change doesn't happen within a 90-day engagement. It happens when someone is in the room long enough to understand your real challenges and help take your hand and walk through those challenges over time. Conventional philanthropy focuses almost entirely on program funding, and that has left nonprofits unable to deal with the chronic infrastructure problems that they have. Organizations can't invest in themselves, so the capacity for their change stays low. So when funders wonder why those organizations are not more effective, part of it is because they're under-resourced, and not under-resourced just in funding, but in terms of guidance, in terms of strategy, in terms of having a different set of eyes to see where they're vulnerable and where they can improve. The Giving USA data says that giving is growing. The growth is increasingly concentrated at the top of the giving pyramid, to use an older term. That is risk hiding inside a good headline, right? So, and Foster's opinion article, where she talks about the capacity building, says that organizations that actually change and grow are the ones that have consistent outside support and strong peer networks over time. So both of these pieces of data are pointing to the same thing, that relationships are part of infrastructure at nonprofit organizations. Not just donor relationships, peer relationships with other organizations trying to do the same thing as your organization, and consulting relationships. So having consultants that help you beyond just the next grant cycle, right? So organizations that build those relationships right now are the ones that are going to be resilient when the market takes a dip and that affects their philanthropic giving. These are the organizations that are going to be able to bounce back. The ones that already have consultancy support, that have a peer network, that are working on their capacity building over time with a strong strategy. You're always vulnerable, not just to the market, but a donor could decide that their priorities lie elsewhere. And you want to make sure that you have a strategy already in place for that. So one of the things that I try to do as a consultant is to do that. I focus on, I have my Thrive framework, which are the 6 types of individual giving revenue that you need. You need to not only diversify between your grants, your corporate strategy, and your individual giving, but within the individual giving category, you should be diversified across the different types of gifts. You should have some transformational donors because they're going to really give you that volume so that you can do what you need to do and grow. And then you need to also be building in things like a monthly giving program so that you can build that regular, dependable monthly support that's not tied to 1 or 2 major donors so that it's less vulnerable to those swings in the market. You also need to have multi-year pledges that you don't need to go out and solicit anew every year so that you can really lean on your staff in a way that's not going to burn them out, right? So that's one of the things that I can offer. I can also, as a consultant, help you motivate your board. And I do that through my REAL framework. So that's REAL. The first step of that is reframing. So part of what we have to do with staff and with the board is work on our money mindset, our money stories, how we feel about asking and being vulnerable in front of a donor, and learning the techniques of asking in order to engage in that way. So we really have to clear out the subconscious and make sure that we're approaching this business of philanthropy and fundraising in a productive way. The second step that I do with board members is E for engage. So reframe and then engage. Engage means to get started on what I call fundraising supportive behaviors. My favorite 2 ways for board members to engage is to make thank you calls or write thank you notes. So engaging in stewardship. There's a lot of data that show that outreach from a volunteer leader can be the single biggest motivator to make a second gift. So if a board member calls a first time, that increases the chances of them renewing their giving the next year by a lot. And the second way that I love for board members to engage is what I call door opening. So most of your board members are going to know at least one other person that might be interested in your nonprofit and share those same values with that board member. So tapping their network and just sending a simple email that says, hey, I think you should meet with Jessica, our new executive director. Let me set up a coffee for y'all, or maybe a Zoom call. That's that sort of outreach, what I call door opening, right? Bringing someone new in for you to meet with. So not every single board member is going to move to the point where they're going to be the one asking. So they may just stay at the fundraising supportive behaviors. But for the brave and few and the curious that want to move on to actually asking, providing them with formulas, scripting, and importantly, ways to practice that script. Because you might have your mindset right, but your nervous system might still be operating with those old money stories. So we have to practice so we can come across as confident as we actually want to when we're making an ask. And the final step is L, which is learn, meaning we're reframing any outcome of an ask not as a success or failure, but as an opportunity to learn and refine our strategies for the next time around. So that's the process that I work with boards and walk them through how they can actually engage in fundraising in a meaningful, sustainable way over time. So if you're sitting there thinking, my board is not there yet, I absolutely understand. That is the exact conversation that I'd love to have with you. Maybe you're sitting there thinking, hey, I'm at a small organization. We don't have donors that have been giving for 15 years, Jessica, that might be ready to make a planned gift. So planned giving just feels like an absolute pipe dream. Okay, I hear you. I want to offer a little bit of a reframe. So in the Giving USA data, they cite several different organizations that went to their long-term donors. And again, long-term may be relative. Maybe you're a new nonprofit and you've been open 5 years. If you have folks that have given to you every single year for those 5 years, they're the people you should be talking with. The length of giving matters less than the loyalty and regularity of that giving, right? So they might have started off as small donors. Nobody walks in day one and makes a legacy gift. Usually it does take some time. But that $25 donor that you're cultivating today, maybe trying to turn that $25 gift into a $60, $5 a month recurring gift. That is a step toward a planned gift, right? And you can go ahead and begin talking about, hey, we are the type of organization that takes bequests, that is the beneficiary of beneficiary designations, that we could be that person in your estate plan. You're planting seeds, right? And so again, you might not actually have a conversation with a donor in the first few years you start putting out the plan giving marketing material, but that is going to pay off in the long run because you're planting seeds, you're getting on their radar, you're helping them think about setting up a will. Many Americans don't even have a will. It's shocking how few Americans have a will. So you are actually also doing them a favor, getting them to think about their estate planning, which everyone should have their estate plan in order. So it's a no-lose situation, except for the time it takes to put that up. And next week I'm going to be talking more about plan giving, and I actually sell template kits on my website where you can purchase copy to put onto your webpage that describes the plan giving. It includes a template for sample bequest language. It includes a plan gift letter of intent to document those gifts. So that's an option out there that's very affordable. I think I priced it at $89 or $99 for the whole kit. It's got social media posts, emails that you can put out, and you just customize it for your organization. I haven't really promoted a lot of my store products in a very long time because I'm focusing on my consulting work, but it is an option out there, especially for smaller nonprofit organizations that don't have a staff member that can generate content like this. But you need to be out there, you need to be getting in the game, getting on the list of folks that, especially baby boomers, who are going to be part of this great wealth transfer, whether they know it or not. Baby boomers hold more wealth than any other generation right now, and baby boomers are entering their elder years, and most of them are 70 or older at this point. And beyond planned gifts, we could also talk about IRA rollovers, but it's almost the top of the hour, so I'm not going to get into that today. So I hope you enjoyed this little preview into the top line statistics and takeaways from Giving USA. Giving USA comes out every summer for the previous calendar year. So in what just was published was covering 2025. Next year we'll cover 2026. So I hope this was helpful to understanding the Giving USA data. It's always a lot of data. It's overwhelming. So I always try to summarize the top line takeaways for nonprofit CEOs, board members, and fundraisers out there that are part of my community. So thanks for being here. As always, I'm available. You can book a call at realdealfundraising.com/book a call, all one word. So if you are strapped and you cannot think about how we could take on even one more thing, come to the TikTok Live next week, and we're going to talk about plan giving specifically and how you can get in on plan giving without burning yourself